there, and welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Stevo Martin. As you can see, again, I've got everybody's favourite Irish Celtic podcasting man, is of course Terry Robb. We're here for the wee second episode, if you will, wee short bite-sized chat around about the would-be Celtic future manager candidates. This time it is, which seems to be the darling, Terry, of the Celtic fans, if you gave them a choice, which is of course Bodo Glimt's manager, Kjetil Knutsen. A strange one. We've previously spoke about Wilfried Nancy, and when I got to the end of it, I think you pretty much thought that was going to be the guy that'd be the manager. But as we all know, nothing is a sure thing. Yes, we find Knutsen is somewhere further out of those bookies' odds, maybe about 5-6-1 or upwards, depending on who you decide to do your booking with. Always gamble responsibly, of course. We'll have a wee quick look around him. This one, I think there's a lot less Dubai about. We know a wee bit more about him, and I think it would probably be easier to draw a conclusion on this chap. I think that's fair to say. So we'll get on about that as we always do, but before we do, as we say, once again, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't done it already, hit the subscribe button. We're just about touching 3,000, and you can help us get there. Remember, all the content in Celtic World Order is absolutely free, costs you nothing, so there's no excuse not to subscribe if you aren't watching. If you're watching, not if you aren't watching, you should be watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, share it, tell everybody else, and all the other social media links are down below, so get involved with our socials elsewhere. So, without further ado, Terry, let's get down to business on this one. It is, of course, Kjetil Knutsen, the Bodo Glimt manager. Now, we know plenty about this guy. We spoke about Nancy. You preferred that 3-4-2-1. Similar attacking philosophies. Bodo Glimt manager, 57. He's been there for a long period, mate, since January 2018. And, of course, he's the guy that everybody fell in love with after he out-Angeballed Angeball. Now, we know, coming back to you mentioned when we spoke about Nancy, this idea about December, this idea about, you know, that's when he'd be available. We know that his contract's ticking down, coming to an end. That put him right in that frame. But he's made some peculiar, for a Celtic standpoint, comments where he's been interviewed and says, we've not spoken about a new contract. I'm open to it, and hopefully they don't want to get rid of me. Without putting a downer and wasting the show, does that kill this one at source, or is there always a twist and tail in football, mate?
No, I don't think it kills it, Steve. I mean, everything points to Wilfried Nancy, and I'm glad you got this pronouncing that. I'll try. Is it Kjetil Knutsen? Something like that? Kjetil Knutsen? Something like that. I wouldn't pay much heed to that comment that he's made. I mean, it sounds very much same old, because we've been linked with him every time the manager jobs become available. He's been linked with lots of jobs across Europe, and the narrative seems to be, I'm happy enough where I'm at, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But no, I wouldn't rule him out. The net seems to be narrowing, and he's in there. He's still in there with a reasonable chance. I'd be very, very surprised if we haven't spoken to him yet, and the noise isn't going away. He hasn't disappeared from the betting like many of the other candidates that were up there at the start. For example, the Bruges manager, he was 5-1 at a stage. Now he's disappeared. He would be one. Yeah. He would be one I'd be very interested in. But we're here to talk about Kjetil Knutsen. We've got first-hand experience of this guy. He handed Ange his ass on a plate. But that wasn't just a once-off. This guy has transformed a team that people thought famously was a Wi-Fi password, a 6,000 capacity stadium. Mm-hmm. That's comparable to teams in Scottish Division 1, League 1, whatever.
Yeah, things like that.
He has got a real identity around how his team plays. I mean, it was Angeball on steroids, essentially. We were Angeball, which we thought was intense, and then these guys just completely out-intensed us. He has got Bodo Glimt to the last four in the Europa League. How happy would we be if we got to the last four of this Europa League this season? And he is now in the group stages of the Champions League. How much would we love to be in the group stages of the Champions League? He works wonders on a limited budget perfect for the Celtic board. He develops young players.
Good and bad, mate. Good and bad.
He develops young players.
Don't give him any ideas.
Go for a profit instead of looking for ready-made stars. Music to Nick's ears. I don't know. He's probably his most famous result is dismantling Jose Mourinho's Roma 6-1 in Europe. This guy ticks a hell of a lot of boxes.
Well, let's have a look at it. As we say, let's get a wee stat bomb just for the sake of it. You make a good point. Now, I think, again, as we did with Wilfred Nonsi, let's wind the clock back. When he took over, Bodo Glimt, mate, were in 11th place. That's where they finished, 11th place. And since then, they've had 4 Norwegian championships under him. They've had a couple of second place finishes as well. Bear that in mind. And again, that comes back to when I had the chat around him and I says, I think he ticks all the boxes. My only biggest concern is he's in this wee perfect bubble where everything's aligned and he doesn't want to leave it. I used the example, maybe a bad example, but I says, look at, for example, when you had Davy Moyes, long-term manager at Everton, wasn't winning things, but people were happy with him and he was steady Eddie. And he was in his wee bubble and he had a job protected. And then he moved to the big job. He didn't have that backing, he didn't have that system, didn't have that familiarity, and it didn't translate. That would be my only concern about him. But taking a team from 11th, mate, to champions, he's won the Manager of the Year 3 times, 18-19 season, 19-20, 20-21. So he's 4 Norwegian championships, and of course, some second place finishes in there. 421 games to date, 233 wins, 91 draws, 97 losses, taking 790 points out in available 1,263. Pretty solid. It's pretty solid stuff. This is the bit everybody loves. 959 goals scored, 518 conceded. That's pretty heavy duty. Now, bearing in mind, I'm missing out the last couple of games here. I've went and done my wee bit of research, but that is in the pocket of where he is. That's within a couple of weeks, maybe give or take 2 weeks, that date is there, right? As you said, Europe, mate, the biggest claim to fame was dismantling a Mourinho team. The first team is put 6 past the Mourinho team, 6-1 against Roma in the Conference League group phases. Of course, if you remember, they then succumb to them in the semi-finals. It's Roma that put them out and they go on and win it. That's his big claim to fame.
Steve, this is Mourinho, the most pragmatic, defensive-minded coach in world football.
Exactly. So you can't.
It's the team with a ground capacity.
You cannot turn your names up in that, your nose up in that. Europa League semi-finalist who says, gets their semi-final, has some great results in that campaign, 22 games, 8 wins, 3 draws, 11 losses, which is quite funny. That's not that campaign. That's entirely in Europe. That's in Europe overall. He's taken 27 points out of 66 in Europe, but as we well know, you can work your way through the rounds, and that's neither here. Pretty damn good. In the Conference League, 21 games, 10 wins, 7 draws, 4 losses. And as we also know, quarter-finalists of the conference as well. No matter what you think of that, he's taking them to a semi-final of Europa, a quarter-final of the Conference League. That is not too bad. In fact, sorry, I'm telling a lie. I'm getting myself mixed up there. It was actually the conference they lost to Roma. It was the conference they lost to Roma because, if you remember, Roma went on to win that. Yeah,
well, you've described his achievement in Europe there as not too bad. It's a lot more than not too bad. This is a tiny club with a. It
was the semis of the Euro
round of 6,000. They're beating Jose's Roma. And they're qualifying for the later stages of Europe's other 2 competitions. That's achieving way beyond what the potential of that club should be. And this guy is sought after. Ajax tried to get him the last time that they changed their manager. They've just sacked the latest manager. And you can tie that back to Celtic because he was the guy that signed Kasper Dolberg when we were trying to sign him. And there's all these links. It seems to be when we're going for players or managers, Ajax are always stiffing about as well. And that might be somewhere where he could end up instead of Celtic if he decides he's ready to take the plunge. You did quote him there and say that he was hopeful of a contract. There's also a quote over the last couple of weeks where he also said he was ready to make the next step. So you can.
Well, it's contrasting. It's contrast. Well, the main thing is he's built something here. He's been there for a long period of time, and so he's taken them from 11th to where they are. It's clear that it's a very well-oiled machine at Bodo Glimt. That everything was put in place.
That's the thing. A well-oiled machine at Bodo Glimt. Can he do it if he comes in to a machine that hasn't had any oil on it for about 20 years?
Well, that is the key point. And again, this is the thing. It's all about instant results. Now, I have no doubt, look at we've just went over some of those stats that he's done. Phenomenal. As we say, to get quarterfinals, get put out, lose to Roma go and win it, brilliant. Semi-finalist of the Europa League. In his period, mate, we'd bite your hand off to get to quarterfinal any European tournament. Let alone a semi-final or, God forbid, another final. We take that. We can't even get past the knockout phase. That's the big sort of... So if you could take that away, that'd be great. But I think it is important. He's saying he ticks all the boxes. He's very, attack-minded, but he can be pragmatic as well, because you don't do as well as that if you just completely stick to your principles. It would do him a discredit to say all he does is plan A and do plan A better and so on and so forth. But the one thing, like we spoke about Wilfried Nancy, once we spoke about the transfer budgets and stuff, you made a good point, says, can he work in a good tight budget? And that is a good and a bad thing, right? We look at it, and their income since he's been the manager, they've spent roughly about £35 million on players, which is a pittance. Regardless of being in the Norwegian League, it is a pittance, right, over that period of time. And from that, they've pretty much doubled their money on sales going out the way, just over £67 million coming in. Now, that isn't just around him having an eye for a player. I'm sure he will. But again, Bodo Glimt, like Columbus with Wilfried Nancy, in past years, they've put a lot of investment and time into getting the right mixture of football-minded people, but also analysts, trying to modernise. And a lot of people don't like people that work off a laptop and they're not football-minded people, they're analysts. What do they know about football? And yes, I do get that. You need to strike that balance. But Bodo Glimt have been doing that very, very well and have invested heavily in making sure they get the right people in to do it. So it's clearly bearing fruit now. Like I said with Nancy, this is my biggest issue I've got with pretty much most of these candidates, mate, that we have been talking at and we're looking at. All of them come from generally about, I think maybe McKenna's the big outlier. He's someone who he's been down south, he's doing well for himself, but there's not a defined strategy in place. You talk about Bodo, you can talk about Columbus Crew, or Columbus as they're now called, and you can say that's a big part of their DNA. This data, that's where they're going with it. You can't see that so much with an Ipswich, right? You just can't. But the bottom getting is we don't have that. You will get the manager, but you don't get the system. But I do feel, unlike Nancy, if you drop Knutsen into the Celtic team right now with all the fire that's happening in the background, I think the fact that system isn't in place doesn't matter quite as much, because there'll be less of a dependency on it. In post since 2018, vast experience, great credentials domestically, great credentials from Europe. That's not just because of the system behind him. It is a big part, but it's all about what he does in game to get the results. Do you think that's probably fair to say?
Yeah, I do, Steve. We talked about Nancy, risk reward, really, really high ceiling. Knutsen, I feel, comes with considerably less risk. There's a bigger body of work. It's a bit more close to home. Good track record in European competition. Good track record in flipping players in low, out high. He just ticks so many boxes. I think he's a much safer appointment than Wilfried Nancy. And I think he would, without coming with any guarantees, I think he would remove a lot of the concerns just about the other manager, in terms of he's still in his novice years. He's still learning the role.
Yeah.
But if Knutsen comes in and loses 2 out of the first 3, you're on the phone to Martin again. you know.
Maybe not quite this time, but no, I think as well, is there much to be said about, again, we spoke about the MLS when we looked at Wilfred Nancy, right? Say what you will about the league, right? It is still football or soccer, as they'll call it, but the mechanics, the way that it kind of operates, the thought process, it's a bit more sort of modern, take it or leave it. There's not that kind of outright passion is what I mean. You know, it's very much a new sport over in America, albeit it's been around for ages. It's still, in terms of its stature and growing and people really getting into it and being, it's never going to be someone's first sport. That's what I'm getting at, right? So the expectation levels, it's still more like entertainment, but in countries like Scotland, you know, Norway, Sweden, it's life. It's literally life to folk. And I think that's important to take into account here. There's a lot more. I feel that the leagues, Norwegian's league, Swedish league, they're a lot closer to home to the Scottish league and what we've got. So in terms of that fit as well, do you think that benefits them? Because yes, they're this attacking, forward-thinking team that go hammer and tong. They're scoring a lot of goals. They're very attractive in the eye. I'm not discrediting the other teams and saying that they're all hammer throwers, but they will be in the same way that Celtic kind of are or had been in the Scottish league. They're the more progressive side. They're the more attack-minded side. They're one of the bigger sides. But the other teams around them won't have this inbuilt philosophy to try and play expansive football. So some of the challenges that they can be facing domestically are similar to what you'd be facing at Celtic. You know, travelling and playing your Falkirks, your Kilmarnocks, Dundee away, the setup. So does that translate over quite well as well, the similarities in the leagues, do you think?
I do, but I mean, we can, if we look back in our European history, you've got Rosenborg, you've got Molde. They're teams that we've struggled against in the last 10, 15, 20 years. They would be the main teams that you'd be up against in Norway. In terms of competitivity, again, I mean, your initial instinct is the SPL would be stronger than the Norwegian league. There's actually nothing to really suggest that that's the case. Certainly in our experiences against Norwegian teams, you know, it would be even at best in terms of our results against teams from Norway, and probably in a negative equity, to be honest. But no, his team have got that identity. I think just that one performance against us. I know I talked about the one against Roma being the one that they're most famous for, but the one that really stays in the memory for us as Celtic fans is just that night that they beat us 5-1. They were just so good. And you looked at the lineup and you looked at the names and they meant absolutely nothing to you because they were just players. They weren't anybody you'd heard of. There were nobody with big reputations. And that one performance just gives you so much hope that if this guy came in to Celtic with the size of Celtic, if he can adapt to the size of the club and the potential of the club, and he can perform the same magic, and let's call it that, because that's what it is. It's a magic trick that he's gone in there and performed with that club, and that's what he would bring to the table. If he comes in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months, I think he brings a real excitement, and a lot of it is based on that one performance. But unlike players that we've played against in Europe and fallen in love with, like Barkas, for example, who probably has made more saves in one match at Celtic Park than he made in his whole time as a Celtic goalkeeper. This guy has got a body of evidence behind that. It's not just one night. He has that on repeat against better teams than us.
I mean, the thing is, one thing I've got to look at in terms of a manager coming in as well is stature and respect and commanding respect. I feel that albeit Wilfred Nancy looks as if he is the sort of forward-thinking one, do you believe that players will look, rightly or wrongly, at a track record of a manager? You know, we look at, say, for example, Ronny Deila coming in, right? Maybe a bad example, but Ronny Deila comes in, and it's probably fair to say that, yes, there was a lot of big characters in that dressing room, but did he truly command the respect of them? I would probably say, no, he didn't. There would be some there that were brought in from an early age that would do, but the more established pros, I think there was kickback on it. That's where you had Ange Postecoglou who'd been round the houses, vast experience, and he could command a room. I think that's important. It's the same way like Martin O'Neill comes in at this moment in time to help. If that was just Sean Maloney doesn't command that respect. I think you maybe don't get that from a Wilfred Nonce. He'll come in and he'll be modern, he'll tell you all the right things, but there still will be this wee bit of look at your track record and, you were garbage as a footballer, mate. Knutsen, on the other hand, do you think he's got that in him? Because he's quite a quiet, reserved guy. You don't really hear too much about the personality side of him, but certainly looking at transformation of a team, obviously getting the most out of players on a limited budget and pushing them to their maximum, winning trophies, winning personal accolades and going deep into Europe. I think that is there. Character, strength of character for the Glasgow Fishbowl's massive. Knutsen coming from that wee bubble and moving into it, do you think he's got the minerals for it, mate?
I think they earn that respect when they come in, Steve. You've talked there about Martin O'Neill, and we're surmising that he's gained a lot of respect in the short time that he's been there. But I don't think that'll be because of what Martin achieved as a player or a manager, because that will have been so far in the past. I would imagine, other than the UK players, very few of those lads would have known who Martin O'Neill was. They'd have had to go onto AI or whatever and look up to see his achievements. I genuinely think he's created that. He's earned that respect by making an instant impression on the guys. And I think any manager that comes in, those first few days, those first few sessions, those first few weeks in charge, those first few team talks, that's going to be where he either rises or falls, and he'll gain the respect of the players in that way. I don't think who they are. You can look at a name coming in, and does that name get respect because of what he's achieved in the game? But what if he then steps into the training field and he's talking absolute bollocks and hasn't got a clue? That respect wanes very, very quickly. I think you earn the respect in the way you treat the group of players that you come into. So I'm not too bothered. About that. And football's come on a long way in the last 10 years or so. At that time, Ronnie Dyla's dealing with players that are eating tonics, tea cakes on the substitutes bench and drinking bottles of beer on the way down from a game against Aberdeen, hanging out the window of cars and stuff like that. It's moved on a wee bit, and players are so much more aware of looking after themselves and 24/7 athletes and all of that kind of thing. I wouldn't be too concerned. I wouldn't be too concerned either for Nonce or Knutsen in terms of having the respect of the players. I think you earn that once you come in the door.
Just to take a wee left turn here, on that mentality of the manager and sort of stature and things like that, and commanding a room or, whatever. Brendan Rodgers, despite the way that it ended, great success, phenomenal success that man brought to his right. But I think it's probably fair to say that with Brendan Rodgers came an element of theatre. Brendan, almost like a minor celebrity in his own right. Celtic manager, but then Brendan, the celebrity, the headline, box office Brendan. And sometimes that can be good, but it can also be a bit of sideshow. Do you feel a wee bit more comfortable, particularly with Knutsen, if that's the person that the team's fate's going to be in the hands of, that he seems very much more an unassuming footballing man? His job is football manager. It's not wee funny quips in the, in the media. It's not Gucci belt. It's not, talking in Spanish when there's no Spanish players there. It's simply laser focused being a manager. Is that the kind of guy that we need? As much as we love the Brendan stuff, let's be honest, some of the circus, you laughed at it at the time, but you also kind of thought, right, there's a wee bit of ego there. With Knutsen, I'm sure all managers, if you're going to be a successful manager, you need to have a wee bit of ego in you, but it just feels a wee bit more focused on the job rather than anything else.
I did a wee bit of research on both of these guys, Stevo Nonce, that we touched on in the previous video, and Knutsen. And there was one phrase that was given for both of them, the same two words that the same two words kept coming up: no drama. And that links into what you're saying there. With Brendan, it was constant drama. Every press conference was, it was edge of the seat stuff, because you were tuning in. 3 o'clock on a Friday was nearly as exciting as 3 o'clock on a Saturday or kickoff time, because you knew you were going to get something, particularly towards the end. I think, and again, this could be a good thing or a bad thing. I think this board will want a no drama appointment. I think that will also play into what we're talking about in terms of what we think the structure will look like going forward, where this appointment will very much be a head coach who coaches and develops the players that are brought in. I think that's obvious. But low drama, low maintenance, could it just be a yes man? That's also possible as well.
Well, it remains to be seen. We do need to make some changes, and hopefully as well, maybe similar to we've seen with Ange Postecoglou. He's been long out there in that market. He clearly can pick up some bargains, as he has done at Bodo. Of course, when Celtic come calling, the price might go up, but he's certainly going to have access to maybe untapped markets, and we've kind of found that players from those regions translate over quite well. For me, I would say colours to the mast. He would be my choice. I'm not going to remove my reservations about the fact that he's in a perfect bubble, but I think he's got the minerals, he's got the experience to do it. As I asked you in the last video, mate, on a scale of 1 to 10 on Knutsen, 1, absolutely no chance, get out of my sight, to 10, yes please, this way sir, how long do you want your contract for? Where are you with Kjetil Knutsen?
Give you the same two scores. In terms of the names that have been mentioned, how much would I like this to happen? I would say 8.5, simply because there's only one other candidate that I would like more, and I think he's gone. That's Nicky Hyen. So he would be my highest rating in terms of what I want. So I'm going to go 8.5 on Knutsen. In terms of how likely I think it is to happen, given that I've said 9.5 non-say, because I think that's where we're going. I would still go high on Knutsen. I think there's no smoke without fire. I think he's hung around at the top of the betting and the names that are in discussion. I would say there's a 7 out of 10 chance possibly that this happens. I definitely think it's either one of these two guys, Steve, for me, or it's Martin till the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. I think out of all the candidates, this one in particular, if you could get that over, it is a real statement of intent, because this is a name that's been circling about. Anytime there's been a decent jobs coming up, it's always been mentioned. As we said, Ajax, he got an offer, didn't take it for whatever reason. And I think to prize him away after such a long period of time, it would really get people on side and show that you've shown something that's made them want to make that leap. So, yeah, I fully agree with that. But it remains to be seen. International break rolls on. Hopefully, we are closer to the answer sooner rather than later. Terry, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it, mate. I know you've now got things to go and do, so enjoy whatever you've got to be doing. To everybody out there watching, remember it was pre-recorded. We can't respond in live time, but leave your comments below. I'm pretty sure a lot of you will be loving the thought of Kjetil Knutsen. Give us your pros, your cons, if you have any cons, that is, of course, and let us know your thoughts on it. So until the next time, as always, take care of yourself. We'll see you back here for another video soon, and hail, hail. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Cheers.